There are moments in eternity when time opens like a curtain, revealing the hand of God moving swiftly and surely. Tonight is not just a passing hour. It is a summons, a divine orchestration, a holy whisper carried on the wind saying, "It must happen tonight." You stand not at the edge of another day, but at the threshold of divine intervention. What has long lingered in the quiet chambers of your soul, hope, healing, transformation, has reached its appointed hour, not tomorrow, not someday, tonight. Heaven is not careless with timing, Muyan. The Almighty is never late. And when he says, "And now," it is not a suggestion, it is a decree. Delay, fear, and uncertainty are the language of man, but boldness, trust, and readiness are the language of the Spirit. This is the night when eternity leans in and waits to see your response. Will you recognize the moment for what it is, or sleep through the miracle meant for you? Let us not be like those who asked for signs and then ignored them. Let us be like the servant who keeps the lamp burning, who stays awake because he knows the Master could arrive at any hour. Tonight your faith must rise to meet his word. This divine moment may be clothed in ordinary hours, but hidden within is the extraordinary. Heaven has a schedule, and you're on it. This truth is often hidden from the natural eye, yet it is one of the most comforting and awe-inspiring realities a soul can embrace. There is no randomness in the divine will. Every breath, every step, every delay and divine silence is part of a tapestry too vast for us to fully comprehend. Yet tonight, the curtain draws back ever so slightly, and the Spirit declares, "It must happen tonight. What seemed long awaited and far off is suddenly upon you." The appointed time, the Kairos moment, has arrived, not by accident or coincidence, but because heaven's timeline has aligned with your obedience and your readiness. You are not forgotten. You are scheduled for breakthrough, for revelation, for encounter. There are moments in Scripture that illustrate how God works not according to man's pace, but by divine appointment. When the Israelites cried out under Egyptian oppression, God heard their groans and declared that their time had come. It wasn't that their suffering hadn't mattered before. It was that the fullness of time had arrived. When Sarah laughed at the idea of bearing a child in her old age, God's response was not to match her doubt with rebuke, but to respond with a promise wrapped in timing. At the appointed time, I will return. And so he returned, not early, not late, but on schedule. Menjur, you may have walked through long seasons of silence, waiting for a sign, wondering if God even marked your place on his calendar. But when heaven says it tonight, everything changes. What once felt distant becomes urgent, The delays that threatened to discourage you suddenly make sense, because they were not denials, but divine pauses. These pauses were strategic interludes that kept you from stepping into something prematurely. God doesn't rush holy things. He prepares them in secret until the hour strikes. To understand this divine schedule is to understand that heaven operates in rhythm with faith and fulfillment. The angels move not with haste, but with holy precision. They wait for God's signal, not your timeline. And so, tonight is not ordinary. It is set apart. It is the answer to intercession, the arrival of an ordained moment. You were born for such a time, and this time has now arrived. Heaven did not forget you while others moved forward. Instead, it preserved you for this night. You have been kept, refined, and readied for the unfolding that is now. But the holy irony is that while God's schedule is perfectly timed, we often live unaware of its urgency. We measure by hours and days, while heaven moves by purpose. What feels like another ordinary night may actually be the eve of destiny. This is why spiritual sensitivity matters. If God says, it must happen tonight, then we must shake off the slumber of apathy and rise to meet him in obedience. We must be like the wise virgins who kept their lamps full, alert for the bridegroom's approach. For if he comes and finds us unready, it is not because he did not keep his promise. It is because we did not believe the moment was real. Tonight is not about stirring emotion or generating excitement for its own sake. It is about divine reality breaking into human experience. What God has spoken over your life, what He has stored in heaven's vault for you, what angels have guarded on your behalf, is now being released. The hour is not random, it is divine. You are on the calendar of God, and when He declares that something must happen tonight, it means the season has changed. The soil is fertile, the air is charged, the unseen realm is trembling with motion. Your name has been spoken in heaven, and the earth is echoing it now. If there has ever been a time to believe, to act, to surrender, it is now. If there has ever been a moment when you must not harden your heart, it is now. This divine appointment is not just a gift, it is a summons. To ignore it would be to walk away from a window that may not open again in the same way. God is not cruel, He is precise. And tonight, His precision has brought you here, to this threshold, this intersection of time and eternity. So stand with holy expectation. Trust that the schedule of heaven is not only real, but right on time, and that time is now. Spiritual readiness is greater than physical preparation. This is a truth that often escapes the minds of those who live tethered only to what they can see and touch. While the world teaches us to prepare with our hands, to make plans, pack bags, rehearse routines, and align calendars, the kingdom of God speaks of a deeper and visible preparation, a posture of the heart, a tuning of the spirit, a surrender of the soul. Physical readiness might allow us to arrive on time, but only spiritual readiness allows us to recognize the moment when God shows up. Tonight, the divine call is not to sharpen your outer tools, but to still your spirit and make space for holy visitation. God is not looking for perfection in your circumstances. He is not waiting for you to have the perfect finances, the right network, or the ideal environment. If those were the prerequisites, most of the Bible's heroes would have been disqualified. Moses had nothing but a staff, Gideon was hiding in fear, and David was a forgotten shepherd boy. What marked them, what elevated them from the ordinary to the extraordinary, was not their physical preparedness, but their spiritual posture. Their spirits were tuned, even if imperfectly, to hear and respond when God called. That is what matters tonight. It is not whether you feel ready in the flesh, but whether your heart is willing to say, "Here I am," when the voice of God moves. Voice of God moves. There is a tragic irony in how many people spend their lives preparing for moments that may never come, while missing the one moment that carries the power to shift everything eternally. The bridegroom in the parable did not reward those who had polished shoes or well-decorated lamps. He welcomed those whose lamps were full of oil, those whose spirits had been watchful, whose hearts remained soft, who kept believing even when the night grew long. The oil represents intimacy with God, sustained faith, and inner anticipation. It is the invisible evidence that you have not let the fire go out in your soul. You may not have a plan for tomorrow, but if your spirit is ready tonight, you are prepared in the only way that truly matters. The world around you may suggest you're unprepared. You may even hear voices within that accuse you of lacking the qualifications to receive something divine. But remember, spiritual readiness is not measured by your accomplishments. It is measured by your availability. God can do more with a yielded heart than with 1,000 strategies. Tonight, the question is not are you physically able, but are you spiritually awake? Can you sense that something sacred is near? Can you feel that heaven is knocking, even if it doesn't make sense in your current reality? You do not need to understand the full plan to be spiritually ready. You do not need to know how the Red Sea will part, only that you must walk toward it when God says move. Faith is not built on control, it is built on trust. And trust is an act of the Spirit. It is what enables you to stand at the edge of uncertainty and believe that God will meet you there. Physical preparation wants proof before obedience. Spiritual readiness obeys because it knows who gave the instruction. That's what matters tonight. Not that everything looks right, but that your heart is right before the one who calls you. There are those who miss their moment, not because they were unworthy, but because they were unready. They demanded clarity before surrender. They sought confirmation before commitment. But the divine moment, the holy visitation that comes in the night, does not wait for perfect alignment of earthly things. It waits for the spirit that whispers back, "Yes, Lord," in the dark. That whisper is more powerful than any earthly credential. That yes moves angels. That surrender opens the heavens. So tonight, you are not being called to rehearse or to calculate. You are being called to yield, to still your thoughts, to silence the noise, to listen for the gentle knocking that says this moment is different. This is not an interruption. It is an invitation. The divine moment will not compete with your distractions. It will wait at the door of your heart, asking only that you be willing, not worthy. You may feel like you're standing barefoot in the wilderness of uncertainty, but if your spirit is open, then you are on holy ground. The fire does not fall on the prepared stage, it falls on the prepared heart. And so, let go of the fear that you're not ready in the ways the world defines readiness. Be prepared in the way heaven measures it. Let your lamp be filled with oil. Let your heart be open to wonder. Let your spirit be attentive. For tonight, the Holy One passes by, and he seeks those who have eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are ready to receive. Obedience tonight unlocks doors for tomorrow. This is not merely a poetic thought. It is a divine principle that echoes throughout all of Scripture and resonates in the lives of those who have walked closely with God. Often we believe that the decisions of today will affect only today, but in the kingdom of heaven, a single act of obedience has ripple effects that transcend time. God sees the full picture. He knows where one step leads, even when we do not. So when he says move, act, speak, or stay, and especially when he says do it tonight, he is not asking for convenience. He is inviting you to align your present moment with a future only he can see. Too many people wait for the future to reveal itself before they obey. They want certainty before commitment, results before action. But this is not how divine purpose unfolds. In the spiritual life, God often speaks in a whisper and moves in shadows before revealing his glory. He gives an instruction wrapped in mystery, a word that demands trust rather than comprehension. It is in this sacred tension that obedience becomes the key to a door we didn't even know existed. If you wait to understand every detail before responding, you may miss the doorway entirely. But if you obey tonight, even when it feels uncertain, even when the path is dim, the door will swing open in due time. Obedience is rarely convenient, but it is always consequential. What you do tonight, how you respond to the prompting in your spirit, how you act upon the nudge that stirs your soul, has the potential to set in motion blessings that outlive you. When Abraham left his homeland, it made no logical sense, but his obedience to one divine instruction unlocked the promise of generations. When Esther stepped into the king's court, risking her life, she did so not knowing the outcome, but that step saved an entire nation. These were not acts made under perfect conditions. They were born in courage, forged in faith, and carried by the weight of obedience. God never wastes an obedient heart. When you move in step with his command, especially in moments that seem minor or hidden, you align yourself with the eternal. The door that swings open tomorrow may not look like a miracle at first. It may look like a conversation, a connection, a shift in your heart. But behind that door are layers of divine orchestration you could never have achieved through your own striving. The world teaches us to chase, to push, to manufacture results. But heaven teaches us to obey and trust that God will do the rest. Tonight may be quiet. It may even feel like nothing changes when you obey. But in the unseen realm, angels move. Walls crack, chains weaken. Doors you didn't even know were locked begin to open. It is a sacred thing to obey when no one sees. It is a holy thing to say yes when there is no audience, no applause, no immediate reward. But those are the moments that echo the loudest in eternity. God honors the obedience that comes from trust rather than transaction. He is not looking for grand gestures. He is looking for hearts that say, even now, even here, even tonight, I will follow you. That kind of obedience builds foundations that cannot be shaken. It plants seeds in the soil of tomorrow that will bloom at just the right time. Do not underestimate what this night could mean. Do not brush off the prompting simply because it feels small or inconvenient. The obedience you offer tonight might be the bridge to someone else's deliverance, the answer to a prayer you forgot you prayed, or the beginning of a path you never dared to dream about. God's timing is precise, and His instructions are always for your good, even if they stretch you in the moment. If He is calling you to act tonight, it means the time is ripe. What you do now is not just about you, it is about legacy, about impact, about aligning with a divine schedule that includes more than you could ever imagine. So, pause, listen, and respond. Don't wait for confirmation that will only come after you obey. Don't put off what heaven has marked as urgent. When God says, "It must happen tonight," He's not speaking to pressure you. He's speaking to position you. Your obedience is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of the unfolding. Trust that what feels like a small step in the dark is actually a leap into His light. And when the doors begin to open tomorrow, you will look back and understand why tonight mattered so much. Faith must be immediate and unapologetic. When God speaks with urgency, when His voice whispers or roars, it must happen tonight. The only true response is swift and fearless belief. Faith is not a passive agreement with heavenly ideals. It is a courageous act that defies logic and leaps over hesitation. To wait is to risk missing the moment. To stall is to lose alignment with a divine rhythm. God is not merely suggesting a possibility when He stirs your spirit tonight. He's announcing an opportunity whose door will not remain open forever. The window is narrow because heaven is precise, and faith is the hand that reaches out before certainty arrives. The soul that hesitates, that demands a full explanation before moving, has already begun to reason itself out of a miracle. Faith does not ask for comfort or clarity. It acts, it moves in darkness with the confidence that light will meet it along the way. There are countless moments in the lives of God's people when delay would have meant disaster. The Israelites at the Red Sea could have stayed frozen in fear, but Moses lifted his staff before he saw the waters part. Peter stepped out of the boat before he felt the solidity of the sea beneath him. These were not reckless acts. They were instant responses to divine invitation. And tonight, such a moment is standing before you. There is a divine urgency when heaven aligns its purposes with your life. God is not in a hurry, but He is intentional. His urgency does not come from panic, but from perfect timing. When He says now, He knows that everything has come together in the spiritual realm to support your obedience. The atmosphere is charged. The way is prepared. The angels are dispatched, Isa. But it still requires you to respond. Not later, not eventually, but now. Delayed faith is not faith at all. It is disguised doubt. True faith is immediate because it trusts the voice more than the conditions. This moment is not about gathering more information or seeking additional confirmation. You already know in your heart what God is asking. You feel the pull. You sense the shift. Something within you is stirring, not from anxiety, but from holy anticipation. That is not your imagination. It is your spirit recognizing a divine intersection. When God calls you tonight, He is not negotiating. He is inviting. And the invitation carries weight. Your yes must rise now, from the deepest place of trust, not tainted by apologies, excuses, or overthinking. Faith that moves mountains is not measured by emotion, but by immediacy. It does not wait for conditions to be ideal. It does not look for a crowd's approval. It acts because God said so. That is the purest form of faith. The world has taught us to be cautious, to weigh risks, to hesitate until all options are reviewed. But heaven's ways are higher, and they call for a kind of boldness that is anchored in surrender. You may feel small tonight, but if your faith is immediate and unapologetic, you are standing in the realm of giants. Fear always tries to dress itself as wisdom. It whispers caution and analysis when God is calling for courage and action, but faith is not reckless. it is responsive. And when heaven speaks, wisdom is found in obedience, not delay. There is a cost to postponing what God has ordained for now. Hearts can grow cold, doors can close, opportunities can pass. The Israelites delayed entering the promised land, and that hesitation cost them an entire generation. They were not disqualified by lack of promise, but by lack of faith at the right moment. Tonight is holy. It is marked not by ease, but by invitation. God is extending something eternal into the realm of your ordinary life, and your immediate faith is the bridge that receives it. Don't apologize for moving when others are waiting. Don't hold back because you fear what people might say. When God says, "Now, your job is not to explain, it is to respond," heaven will confirm your obedience later through fruit, but tonight it demands only your trust. So rise up. Let your heart say yes without hesitation. Let your steps move before the map is drawn. Let your mouth declare what God has said, even if your mind hasn't yet caught up. This is not the hour for polite religion or cautious spirituality. This is the hour for raw, living, breathing faith. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. Let it be done in you according to His word. Faith is not waiting for perfect peace. It is moving because He spoke. And if He spoke tonight, then tonight is holy, and your response must be immediate and unapologetic. Divine interruptions are often disguised as inconvenient moments. When heaven breaks into time, it rarely does so according to human convenience or earthly logic. God's ways are not confined to our schedules, nor do His plans unfold neatly between our priorities and comforts. He is sovereign, and His movements often come wrapped in surprise, challenge, and holy disruption. The moment you've prayed for, the breakthrough you've waited on, may arrive not in a burst of grandeur, but in a whisper during your exhaustion, a tug in the middle of your chaos, a stirring in the middle of the night when you hoped only for rest. That is how divine moments often arrive, when we least expect them, when our guard is down, when we are interrupted. And if we are not spiritually alert, we risk mistaking the holy for the annoying and the miraculous for the inconvenient. There are moments when we feel too busy, too burdened, or too distracted to stop and recognize what is truly taking place. God does not check our calendars before sending a calling. He does not wait for us to clear space before planting destiny. When He decides it must happen tonight, He often steps into our routine and completely reorders our world. This isn't to punish us, but to awaken us. The divine interruption is a gentle yet urgent reminder that the eternal cannot be squeezed into our comfort zones. It will shake us, unsettle us, and invite us into something greater, if we are willing to be disrupted. Think of the shepherds in the field the night Christ was born. They were doing their job, tending their flocks, wrapped in the silence of routine. Yet heaven tore open the sky to deliver a message that would change the course of history. That was no scheduled event. It was a divine interruption. The angelic host did not wait for the shepherds to be ready or in the temple. God met them in their ordinary task and interrupted it with glory. If they had dismissed the light in the sky as a strange weather event or ignored the voice of the angel out of fear, they would have missed the moment, but they chose to respond, to be interrupted, and history was made. Likewise, Moses was tending sheep when he saw the burning bush. A strange sight, a disruption of the ordinary. Had he been too hurried or too tired, he might have walked past it, but he turned aside. That turning was the pivot between obscurity and destiny. The call to lead a nation began with an inconvenient moment in the wilderness. Divine interruptions do not always come with trumpets and clarity. Sometimes they come as restlessness in your spirit, a sudden change in plans, or an encounter that seems random but is soaked in purpose. Tonight, you may feel like everything is going off course. Perhaps what you had planned is falling apart. You may feel unprepared for what is being asked of you. That is the signature of the divine interrupting the script you wrote for yourself. It's not always comfortable, but it is always intentional. When heaven says it must happen tonight, it's because something has been aligned that you cannot see. Something is ready that you did not prepare. And God is moving now because later would be too late. Will you allow yourself to be interrupted? For the truth is, many people pray for miracles but reject the form they come in. They pray for purpose but resist the process that introduces it. God rarely arrives when we feel most ready. He comes when the moment is ripe, when the spiritual atmosphere is aligned, when destiny requires a shift. And shifts rarely happen without friction. The question is not whether you are comfortable, but whether you are listening, because the thing that feels like a disruption may actually be your door. The thing that frustrates your plan may be God fulfilling His. Tonight, you must look again at what seems inconvenient. That call you weren't expecting, that interruption to your routine, that sudden urge to pray, to write, to forgive, to act. Don't push it aside because it doesn't fit your agenda. Don't ignore it because it demands too much. This is sacred territory disguised in mundane clothing. This is eternity knocking at the door of time. Let your heart be open to the divine breaking in, not according to your plan, but according to His perfect will. So embrace the holy interruption. Recognize the sacred in the unexpected. Let go of the need to control every detail and instead respond to the one who orders all things for your good. What feels like a detour may be the exact path God designed to take you where you belong. Tonight is not random. Tonight is not inconvenient. Tonight is divine. And if you dare to respond, you may find that what you thought was a disruption is actually the miracle you were born for. This night is sacred. Don't sleep through the sacred. In a world so often wrapped in noise, distraction, and endless activity, it is easy to let the hours slip by without realizing when eternity touches time. But there are moments that are not like the others, moments bathed in divine intention, veiled in stillness, charged with heavenly presence. Tonight is such a moment when God declares it must happen tonight. He is not issuing a casual suggestion. He is unveiling a holy summons. The sacred is present, moving quietly, and yet it carries eternal weight. But sacred moments do not always shout. They whisper. And the tragedy is that many sleep while the heavens are moving on their behalf. To sleep through the sacred is not just a physical posture. It is a spiritual condition. It is the heart that has grown dull, the mind that has been numbed by routine, the soul that has stopped expecting the miraculous. Sacredness requires sensitivity. It demands a soul that is still enough to hear the rustle of angel wings, a heart tender enough to feel the pull of divine calling. There are moments when heaven chooses to move, and only the awakened will notice. God passed by Elijah not in the fire, not in the earthquake, but in a still, small voice, and it was enough to bring a prophet to his knees. Had Elijah been asleep in his spirit, he would have missed the voice of God entirely. This night is not ordinary, though it may look like any other. It may not be lit by signs and wonders in the sky, but it is drenched in significance. A shift has taken place, invisible to the eye, but evident to the spirit. The sacred has come near, and it is waiting to see who will rise, who will watch, who will respond. Who will respond? The danger is not that God will fail to speak. It is that we will fail to listen. The disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane, even while the Son of God sweat drops of blood, fell asleep. Though he had asked them to keep watch, though the moment was weightier than any they had ever encountered, they allowed their fatigue to rob them of participation in sacred history. Too many times has the sacred brushed past our lives, unnoticed and unwelcomed, because we were spiritually asleep. Not because we were evil, not because we were rebellious, but because we were inattentive. The sacred requires reverence. It demands room to enter. It does not force itself. It offers itself. And tonight, the offer is on the table. Heaven has drawn near. God is moving. Something is being released. Something is being birthed. A prayer you once prayed has come due, and now is the time to rise and take hold of it. Do not confuse silence for absence. Do not mistake stillness for nothingness. The sacred often comes dressed in quiet. It moves beneath the surface of things, changing the atmosphere, stirring the unseen. To be spiritually awake means to be aware of this holy undercurrent, to recognize when the air feels different, when the familiar becomes suddenly weighty. That weight is glory. That shift is sacred. And tonight it is here, not by accident, but by divine design. You must resist the temptation to treat this night as common. Just because the stars do not look different, and the clock ticks forward as usual, does not mean this is not the night of transformation. God sanctifies time by His presence, and when He inhabits a moment, that moment becomes eternal. It becomes a hinge upon which destiny swings. Your awareness of the sacred is the invitation it waits for. Will you honor what God is doing, even if it interrupts your comfort, your rest, your rhythm? Will you stay awake, spiritually alert, burning with the expectation that God is near? Tonight is a threshold. The sacred is drawn close, and the ones who will receive what heaven is releasing are not those who are strongest, or loudest, or most prepared by earthly standards. They are those who are awake. The ones whose hearts are tender, whose spirits are leaning forward, who say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Let your soul be found among the watchful. Let your heart be lit like a lamp in the window, saying to heaven, "I am ready. This night is holy. Don't sleep through the sacred." Be awake, for the King is near, and the moment is now.